Good day, everyone. Today I've got an interesting folk tale for you from the land of Russia. And this particular story is called How Ionike Set the Sun Free. But the interesting thing to note is that the book in which I read it has also got a separate title in the contents called How Ionike Set the Sun on Fire. Whereas when I go to the story itself and start reading the story, the title is How Ionike Set the Sun Free. Now, it was because of this little quirk that I thought that I would select this story, and I read the story and I liked it, and today I'm going to narrate it. Now, before I proceed any further, let me show you the book in which this story is compiled. This. I got this from a hidden bookstore in Kolkata, where I would love to take you should you be interested. And it's an interesting place full of a lot of books. Books cover every surface, and its owner is practically an uncle of mine. So let me know down in the comments if you would like to go, especially if you're in Kolkata. I guarantee it's a treat for the eyes and the reader's heart. So, how Ionike set the sun on fire. Let's go. So, this story begins with the sun having been imprisoned by three dragons: dusk, evening, and night. Nobody knows where the sun is being held because nobody dares venture to the castle of the dragons to talk to the dragons or to fight the dragons until Ionike's father decides that something must be done. Because you see, without the sun, the crops are dying. Without the sun, the uh, land is in perpetual darkness. Without the sun, people cannot see, their eyesight is being affected. So, all of these things accumulating together lead to Ionike's father assembling a band of men and going after the sun, going after the dragons. But he never comes back. And Ionike and his mother, they both wait for him for years, and then slowly his mother starts to grieve her loss, starts to grieve her husband. And Ionike decides that he will be the one to set the sun free. Now, as you can see, this is a fairy tale meant for kids, but we are all kids, aren't we? So I thought, why not pick it up? It can't be as dark as the Grimm's Tales. And yes, I will be doing the Grimm's Tales later. So Ionike was one day playing, and the czar of the uh, area, he was riding by, and he heard this song that Ionike was singing, that when I get older, I'm going to go fight the dragons and I'm going to free the sun. Which kind of reminds you of Canaan's waving flag. When I get older, I will be stronger. They'll call me freedom, just like a waving flag. Anyway, I'm sorry, I'm really chirpy this morning. So I'm, letting that energy out as well. So anyway, so the Tsar gets very interested in what Ionike is singing, and he stops his horse and he listens to the boy. Then he comes up to Ionike and he's like, "Do you really want to free the sun?" And Ionike is like, "Sir, that is my greatest wish." So then what happens is the Tsar says, "Okay, come live with me. And when you come live with me, I will train you to be a warrior. I will feed you well. I will turn you into a strong man. And then you can use that strength to, try and free the sun." So Ionike agrees and he says his goodbyes to his mother and he goes off with this Black Tsar. At first, when I heard the title Black Tsar, I thought that maybe the Black Tsar is actually in cahoots with the dragons, but that is not the case because the Black Tsar uh, takes care of Ionike like he would his own offspring. And yes, Ionike, as the years pass and he trains in swordsmanship, in archery, and everything, he does indeed grow up to be a strapping young man with, bulging muscles and stuff like that. Typical fairy tale hero. And he is ultimately ready to go on this quest to find the sun and to free it. So then Ionike is told, go to the stables, pick a horse, take your weapons, clad yourself in armor, and let's see if you can make good your saying about setting the sun free. So Ionike goes to the stables. Here something funny happens. The first horse he puts his hand onto collapses under the sheer weight of his muscles. This happens to the second horse, to the third horse, even to the point where the fifth horse he touches also dies. At his touch, the weight of his muscles is enough to cripple the steed. But then he sees a horse that has got lesions on its body, that is thin and diseased. But when he goes and touches the horse on the head, the horse says, "Master, I will serve you." Now again I'm repeating, this is a fairy tale, so yes, animals do talk. And what a charming thing this horse says, isn't it? "I will serve you, master." And when Ionike has made his preparations and is getting onto the horse suddenly changes into a beautiful white stallion. And it is quite clear that there is magic afoot. Ionike is given a special sword by the Black Tsar and he is wished well. And he starts to ride off. He rides for days and days and days until he comes to a bridge. And here he pulls his rein. For on the other side of the bridge he spots a silhouette. And the silhouette is of the first dragon. Yes, Dusk rides with a vengeance across the bridge to challenge Ionike. And the bridge vibrates under the hooves of the horse that Dusk is riding. And Dusk comes and stands before Ionike and he's like, "You dare to challenge us! You dare to challenge the three dragons! We have imprisoned the sun, you want to set it free. You think it'll be easy?" And so there is a pitched battle with Dusk. Swords are crossed, fangs are bared. The horse also gets into the mix. All of this thing happens, but Ionike manages to lift up Dusk and throw him into the mud. And there he lies. Ionike slays him and crosses the bridge. So with Dusk defeated, the next foe is Evening, who is a little more powerful than Dusk. And once again Ionike rides for a few days across hill and dale and forest until he comes to the second bridge. And across the second bridge he spies the silhouette of Evening. Evening is bigger and broader than Dusk. And Evening rides full tilt towards Ionike and says, "You have killed my brother. I will avenge him." And they have a pitched battle. And Ionike has a tougher time defeating Evening than he did Dusk. But ultimately he does manage to defeat Evening. And so there is but one dragon remaining. The king of the dragons, Night. And when Ionike is riding again towards confrontation with Night, his horse speaks one more time. And his horse says, "Master, I must warn you, this will be your toughest challenge. If you can defeat him quickly, well and good. But be very wary of him." So, Ionike comes to the third bridge, the final bridge, and behind the bridge he sees the castle. The big castle is behind him, and he notices someone ride out of the castle. Now, this foe is huge. He's 8 feet tall almost, and he's broad in the shoulders. He's got a powerful chest, and he wields a massive sword. And Ionike is a little scared, but his horse says, "Do not fear, master. Attack with tactic, and you will succeed." And so he gets off his horse, and Evening being defeated, Dusk being defeated, there is only Night left. And Night comes and says, "You have killed both my brothers. It is my solemn oath that I will slay you." And they cross swords. And they go on fighting and they go on fighting for days and days and days and days. Until at last they are both exhausted. Their throats are parched. They have not eaten, so they both collapse side by side, neither of them having the strength to lift up the sword and strike the killing blow. It is at this point, and this is straight out of Lord of the Rings, mind you. I could not believe that I was actually reading this, and I was reminded of Gwahir the Wind Lord, if I pronounce that right, of course. And so, what happened is that this eagle was flying over the battlefield, and both Knight and Ionike screamed to the eagle with what the last breath left in their lungs that please give us some water. Take some water in your beak and scatter it over us. Except when Ionike made the request, he said, do not give him the water. Give me the water so I may defeat him and free the sun. Now, as it so happens in a situation where there is no sun, obviously even the nature's original creations like the eagles and the other birds, they will be want to take your side. And yes, this is slightly cliche, I agree. But what happened is the eagle made a decision to help Ionike and not Knight. So essentially, what happened was the bird went to a river, scooped up some water in its beak, came back and scattered it over Ionike. And thus, being refreshed, Ionike could get onto his knees, take his sword, and strike the killing blow on Knight. Having defeated the three dragons, the only thing that was left was for Ionike to go to the castle. And the castle was looming in front of him. And just before the castle, there was a big brambly wood, a dense wood through which it was not possible to pass on horseback. It is then that the horse said, Master, did you not know you can turn yourself into a butterfly at your will? Turn yourself thus, and when you want to change back to human form, all you have to do is alight on the ground. And so Ionike casts the spell, and he changes into a butterfly. And he goes into the castle. And now inside the castle, he meets the wives of the dragons. Evening's wife, Dusk's wife, and Night's wife. And Dusk's wife says, if my husband is dead, I will turn myself into a poisoned well, and therefore Ionike will drink from me and die. And Evening's wife says, if my husband is dead, I will turn myself into a grapevine, and Ionike will eat the grape from the vine, and he will die. And Night's wife says that if my husband is dead, then I will turn myself into a big, juicy apple tree, and Ionike will take one bite from the fruit of my tree, and he will die. Ionike hears all this. And then they go down to the dungeon together to check on the sun, and Ionike follows. Obviously, he's in butterfly form still, he hasn't alighted on the ground. So, when he gets to the dungeon where the sun is being held, he notices that the sun is being kept inside a locked chest, a triple locked chest with chains around it. And the wives, they leave the dungeon. They do not notice Ionike in butterfly form. And Ionike has but to alight on the ground. He alights on the ground, changes into human form. And once he has changed into human form, he takes his sword and he smotes the locks and destroys the chains. And suddenly the sun is free and it rises. And this is a really biblical moment over here because let there be light and there was light. That's exactly what happened. Let there be light, said Ionike, and there was light, the sun rising. So, yes, as you can see, it's morning where I am. So, here's the sun for you. So, the sun has risen. And Ionike changes back into a butterfly and he flits through the forest. But suddenly he feels thirsty, and in front of him he sees a well. But then he remembers what the wives have said, and he strikes the well with his sword. And lo and behold, one of the wives lies dead. Similarly, he comes across a grapevine. He is tempted to eat the grapes, but then he again remembers what the wives have said, strikes the grape with his sword, and behold, another dead wife. And finally, when he is almost out of the forest, he sees the apple tree. And again, he remembers what has happened, what has been told to him in supposed secret. And he again says the same thing. He tries to eat, but then because he has remembered, he strikes the apple tree with his sword. And once again, another dead wife. So basically, he's not content with killing the husbands, he also wants to kill the wives. So, having killed everybody in the castle and having reduced the castle to brambles and having successfully rescued the son, Ionike gets back on his magic horse and rides back all the way to the Black Tsar's castle. And the Black Tsar says, "You have succeeded in your mission. Congratulations." And Ionike says, "As a reward, I would like to spend the rest of my days with my mother." And the Black Tsar grants his request. And that is where the story ends, with our faithful Ionike, having achieved his goal, returning back to his mother. So that was how Ionike set the sun free. Alternatively, how Ionike set the sun on fire. Whichever one you prefer. That was this episode concluded. I hope you are staying vigilant and safe. I'm sorry I was a little late in publishing this episode. Next week, I shall be doing one of the greats. Either I'll be doing Mopasa or I'll be doing, I don't know, maybe Kafka. But then again, Kafka is difficult to narrate. So I'm leaning more towards Mopasa. I did promise I would be featuring Mopasa when I did the mom story, The Luncheon. So I'm going to try to do Mopasa. Wish me luck. If you like this video, comment and see you next week. Adios.